It's now time to proceed to MedLove. This will be hosted here by gorgeous-looking Surabhi Kanal. Surabhi is an out-of-town medical student and yet comes to our studios for complete filming of her segments. Let's see this beautiful lady's presentation today with her honoured guest, Smita Moon.
Now, we're back with Smita from where we left off last month. Now, in the United States alone, there are various organizations that work to prevent domestic violence. Do you feel that these organizations are effective? Or how do you think like an organization like MedLove that provides a platform for these voices to be heard, how do you go about that?
So I obviously can't speak to all of the organizations that are out there. I imagine that many are effective, many are ineffective. And in regards to my personal experience, I could say that I contacted a domestic violence organization in Chicago. But for me, that organization, it was South Asian focused. It honestly was not very helpful. I felt that they were connected to lawyers who I'm sure were giving them sizable donations.
Right.
They didn't, for example, tell me that I could have represented myself, probably spared $30,000, and probably have won my case. So it depends, but I think there is a lot of important work being done in regards to awareness and just the talking about this issue more than anything else. And when it comes to an organization like MedLove, whether it's human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, these are just things that need to be spoken about, period, in our community.
Right. And so what do you think would have helped you organize these resources or help that shortage for that resource?
So I think, one, I would have benefited from awareness. This was something that not my parents, not my community, no part of my educational upbringing from high school to college ever talked about domestic violence. No one talked about healthy or unhealthy relationship behaviors, what to look for, things like consent, right? So that would first and foremost would have been helpful. And in regards to organizations, I honestly don't know, because you don't know what you don't know when you're in a situation like that. So had I known, I would have just done it entirely different. I would have gone to court by myself with my own binder and represented myself and, you know, taken my chances that way. And again, the resources are so limited. I believe the statistic in America is there are more dog shelters than there are women's shelters. So,
And do you see like a difference for domestic violence issues in certain cultures versus South Asian cultures?
Absolutely. I mean,
how would you?
In our community, there's just such a taboo about everything. Everything is born from shame, what other people think. And just like my mom was worried about me talking about it, you know, who's going to marry you if you talk about this? That is just very prevalent in our community. We feel women typically everywhere are blamed for what happens to them. And we've seen that in the American fabric with the #MeToo movement.
Right. How do you react to things like the mommy track or everything leading up to marriage as far as like the South Asian community?
So I just think there's just so much pressure that life is supposed to look like one linear path. You start here, you go here, it ends with marriage and children. You're not allowed to consider that life could deviate from that. And you're made to feel bad for that, right? I'm turning 39 years old and I'm still single, right? But I'm made by my community to feel bad for that. Similarly, when someone experiences something like domestic violence or rape or anything, they're also made to feel bad. They're made to feel culpable for what happens to them. And that's really unfortunate and exacerbated in our community.
Right. And it also goes to the idea when we use the word survivor versus victim all the time, it gives you this idea that you have to be resilient and you have to be fighting all the time, which is sometimes I try to refrain from that word as well, but it definitely is the more positive word.
Great point.
Yeah, so we don't have to feel like every day's a battle, you know what I mean? And we really do appreciate, we're very grateful to women like you that speak up, because especially in this community, there's not a lot. Like you said, there were many victims before you that chose to never speak up. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us here today.
Sure, and I'd just like to add one thing.
Yes,
the way we change all of this for anybody at the end of the day is one, education. Talk to your children. If you're a parent watching this, talk to your kids about healthy relationships. Don't just assume that because you and your spouse and partner are in a healthy relationship that they're going to know what to avoid. People need to know what these signs look like, and they need to hear it more than one time. If you're an educator, also talk about these things. And at the end of the day, what I truly believe personally, as Smita shares, is that we can change people's mindsets by sharing our stories. So the way I've come to you today with MedLove, sharing my story unapologetically without shame, really that's how we we change this for anybody at the end of the day.
Right.
I have a little niece who it would destroy me to know that she were to ever experience what I lived through. And similarly, I know I have spared women from having to date that person who I dated, and that's how we change things. So I hope that if someone out there is living through this, 1, you're not alone. 2, I believe you. And 3, this really can change for all of us going forward. So thank you so much, Sorby and MedLove, for having me.
Yeah, it's very important that we don't reciprocate these ideas onto the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. We need to change it.
Education is everything.
100%.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for next month's episode as we discuss more women's issues and how to work towards a better world. Now, don't forget that these issues aren't just prone to South Asian communities, or it can happen in any community at any place at any time. So awareness is very important, and we are grateful to Ms. Smita Moon for being here on the show today. Don't forget to spread love, tell a joke, and keep your head up high. This is your hostess, Surabhi Kanal, signing off.